Normally when cutting the fretboard to width, I would just centre it so that the radius is perfectly centred up the entire length. This time what I'm going to do is move it down towards the bass side by about 7 mils so that the hump of the radius is closer to the treble. I haven't exactly explained why, have I? When we set up an acoustic guitar, the action at the 12th fret is higher for the bass strings and lower for the treble strings. Now the 12th fret is halfway along the scale length. That means that the difference between those two heights is actually doubled at the saddle, which results that the bass strings are kind of about in the middle of the height range. These two centre strings are at the top and the treble strings are way, way, way down low. This gives rise to a very asymmetric looking saddle. It also means that those treble strings, as they pull across the bridge, have a lot less mechanical advantage to wiggle the bridge and thus wiggle the soundboard. I've ruled a line along the hump of the radius so that you can see that it's offset towards the treble side. And I can also see, and indeed measure, that the fretboard is taller on the treble side than it is on the bass. On this experimental build, I'm going to reduce the distance between the nut and the first fret to improve intonation on the first few frets. A lot of luthiers are doing this, and I've tried to get an idea of by how much, but it's pretty hard to come by, so I'm going to try about 1/32 of an inch, which is about 0.7 of a millimetre. The best way to do this, of course, would be in the slotting fret template, but once you do that, you've essentially dialed it in. If I get an idea of by how much, I'll do precisely that, but this is just an experiment. So I've clamped the fretboard to the end of a piece of wood, and I'm just going to take it to a belt sander and sand off that amount. Well, unfortunately, I leaned it just a little bit and it's put a tiny little bevel on the end, which will not do. So I'll just knock that a little bit more proud and we'll square it up. Now that's meant I've taken off slightly more than I intended to, about 0.8 or 0.9 of a mil, depending on whether you're, taking centre imaginary fret equivalence or absolute edge. If it's too much, I can always shim it with a piece of paper. Let's wait until it's time to string the guitar up and see what difference it makes. So I consider those two little experiments a great success. When playing the guitar, you don't notice at all that the fretboard is just ever so slightly tilted upwards, like that. In fact, you can barely see that this side is thicker than this side. However, you can clearly notice that after getting a good graduated action at the 12th fret, the saddle is perfectly symmetrical. And in theory at least, that means that these upper strings will be speaking a little bit more clearly. I'm also happy with the slightly shorter distance between the nut and the 1st fret. In my opinion, it makes the guitar a bit more cowboy chord friendly, and in my limited testing, the first few fretted notes have remarkably good intonation, which can be a problem, as you know. So both of these steps are going to be part of my standard procedure from now on. Maybe not so fast. I think for basses I'm going to keep the fingerboard radius perfectly centered. I want to give that low E string every possible advantage it can get.